Oh, it's wonderful in here. Not so much outside. I don't think you can hear it, but the wind is just roaring. It's snowing. There's a big blast. You can hear the lake roaring at my back. I have another Manaboosho story to tell. Now, as stated earlier in our discussion, Manaboosho would appear to people in different forms. He was a teacher, he was a punisher of bad people, he was a rewarder and a helper to good people. But it so happened that he was a member of this village. It's one point in time. It's one point in time where the village was succumbing to this illness, this fever, that was sweeping its way through the populace. One by one, the people were dying. The ones that weren't dying were laying in their beds, in their lodges, shivering and preparing to die. Well, Manaboosho went to the lodge of a very wise person and spoke to her, asked her, "Grandma, what can I do to help?" And she replied to Manaboosho, not really knowing who he was, "Well, grandson, there's nothing really you can do. The spirit of fever, Manasepwang, is attacking our village. And he lives way far towards the middle of the big lake, through the treacherous waters. And not only that, there's two big creatures that guard the entrance to his island, the island of death. It would be a fatal journey for you if you tried." But Manaboosho had his ways. So he loaded his canoe with his bow and a quiver of arrows, and also put in the canoe these two bladders for the great fish sturgeon that contained oil. Put his canoe, the Wigwas Jiman, birch bark canoe, into the water and said, "Canoe, go forth." And the canoe shot forth like an arrow. Well, it traveled this incredible distance, not needing Manaboosho to paddle. It was just heading towards that island like an arrow on its own, until it came to this spot in the water where these two large creatures came out, their heads sticking out of the water, roaring at him, swimming towards him. Well, Manaboosho not only had arrows, he had special arrows, and one at a time drew his bow and loosed the arrow at each one of the creatures in their heads and killed them. But upon their death, they exuded this sticky black tarry substance. It just covered the area of the water around the canoe. It wouldn't let the canoe go forward. Now, Manaboosho had prepared for this event with the two sturgeon bladders full of oil. And he poured it onto the water, and it spread along the surface, breaking up that sticky goo that the creatures had bled onto the surface of the water, freeing up his canoe and allowing it to speed forth towards the island. Well, it didn't take long before Manaboosho was able to reach the shore of this island of death. It was just rock and rot covering this island. But it just so happened on this knob, this hill, there was one tree that was clinging onto life that had one branch that still had a few leaves on it. And on that branch sat this little bird. It didn't say anything to Manaboosho, but just kind of studied him as he pulled his canoe onto the shore. He exited with his bow and his quiver full of arrows in search of the spirit of fever. Now, Manaboosho would hold his ground. He would not allow anything to stop him when he set his mind upon it. And after a bit, he heard the heavy footsteps of Manasepwang walking towards him. Now, Manasepwang was no average guy. He was 3 times the size of Manaboosho. He was a beast. He was a monster that had death in his eyes and great malice in his little black heart. He strode towards Manaboosho ever-increasing speed at Manaboosho. Manaboosho could feel the ground shaking under his feet, and he grabbed his bow and loaded an arrow, yanked it back, and loosed that arrow into Manasepwang's chest. Hit where he wanted to, but it didn't do anything other than just anger Manasepwang. Manasepwang sped up. Now, normal mortal people would have backed away and ran for their canoes, but not Manaboosho. He drew another arrow and let it fly into the beast's face, right between the eyes. The only effect it had was angering Manasepwang even further. Well, that little bird was watching this whole scene and decided to speak up, as birds do. Said, hit him in his top knot, hit him in his top knot, because this creature, this monster, this beast, this Manasepwang, the spirit of fever, had a shock of hair coming from the top of his head, tied in a top knot. A brilliant red horsetail of a thing coming out of his head. Well, Manaboosho drew his bow once more, loosing an arrow, hitting the beast right in his top knot. Well, that did affect him. Manasepwang fell over like a tree in the forest, shaking the ground underneath Manaboosho's feet. Well, Manaboosho walked over to the great beast, the dead spirit of fever. Little bird flew next to his foot and landed on a rock. And Manaboosho took some blood from the giant's head, from his wound, his fatal wound, and then said to the little bird, little brother, from this day forth, everyone will know what you did for my village and the rest of humanity in my being able to destroy the spirit of fever. And he took that blood that he got from the giant and rubbed it on the little bird's head. He said, you shall wear this red on your head as a badge of honor. Well, that little bird is a woodpecker. Manaboosho, with the help of the woodpecker, was able to kill the spirit of fever, relieve the effects of that upon his village, and you and I now know the story of how the woodpecker got its red head. Let's see if my sage bundle is still burning. What a pleasant smell. And the slight crackling of the fire in contrast to the tumult that is outside. I thank you for joining me in my teepee for another adventure into Manaboosho's life. One more day until 2021. And no matter what happens in the upcoming year, we shall still have our teepee in whatever form it happens to be in your life, and stories to pass on to future generations. This, by the way, it's getting a little dark. I need to put some more wood on the fire. Hector, my friend, this is your bow. It is finished. I could say that like I'm waiting for the finish to cure, but it could cure on its way to you. I just always have a hard time letting go of my bows. Plus, it seems like it should share a little time in my teepee. And Tello, your bow is a little above 50 pounds at 29 inches of draw. It'll be where you want it tomorrow. I've got 2 finishing coats on the rawhide, so that's taken care of. And once I get it down to 50 pounds or a little less at 29 inches of draw, it's a very nice bow, very snappy. I shall put the finishing touches on it, including the buckskin hand wrap and the really cool rawhide trim on the outside of the wrap. Send it off to you too. And Tello, I have to give you a special thank you. I appreciate it, my friend, for sending the picture of that Maidu bow with that design, because It is a spectacular design. And those red tips, oh, très bien. Alrighty, you have a good one. Thank you very much. And I hope you enjoyed our story.